Okay, everyone, thank you so much for joining. We have a really exciting topic today on Celigo Headless, which will basically cover how you can go about accessing the Celigo platform outside of our traditional UI through a terminal or through an LLM. I'm joined here by two members of our product team, Matt and Tyler. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, maybe Matt first and then Tyler next.
Hey, thanks, Chris, and good to be with everyone today. I'm Matt Graney, Chief Product Officer at Celigo. Been with the company for 9.5 years, actually exactly 9.5 years tomorrow. So great to be speaking with you all today.
Yep, and I'm Tyler Lamparter. I'm a product portfolio strategist here at Celigo. Been here for just a little bit over 4 years and a lot of experience in the integration space using Celigo and various other platforms. So happy to be here.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. And I thought we would open with a poll. This is actually a poll that we put out to LinkedIn, and we had some of our customers respond as well as maybe people who were less familiar with Celigo. But the responses here, I think, are telling of the way the world is evolving and really where work takes place. I wanted to get maybe some of your initial takes on this divide between where people want to build in the future and manage their automations.
I guess I would start by saying I think this is a pretty interesting reflection of the different types of personas that get involved with integration. Maybe from less technical folks who maybe prefer the comfort of a visual interface. Now, obviously, with Celigo Aura, our in-app AI-based assistant that covers the entire gamut of the platform, I think that has certainly grown in popularity. But we see the emergence, of course, of LLM-centric access, and then people looking to interact directly through chat. So some of this, of course, is emerging, which is what we're here to talk about today. But I think it just reflects the sort of evolving demand and probably breaking along persona lines. That's the way I would think of it.
Yeah, and I think that's the perfect segue to this next slide where there's folks who want to use Celigo out of an LLM. We call those AI first users. You might have developers who want to stay in terminal. And then we'll have a lot of customers who want to use our UI and also engage with Aura. Regardless of where you're working from, Celigo enables you to seamlessly work there and work from wherever you work best. So we're exposing the full platform functionality via our REST APIs wherever you want to get work done. And we'll touch on each of these new features, so Celigo CLI and Platform MCP. But this is just to get you sort of acclimated with our overall vision and the end user interface for each of these. So I know you touched on this a little bit, Matt, but what is, we've had this beautiful UI for a while. What is sort of the unlock when it comes to being able to show up in an LLM or in a terminal?
Yeah, I think there are a few things. Again, as I said already, I think a big part of it is about meeting users where they are. There are, I think we see it internally, there is an emerging set of users who spend almost their whole day within their LLM of choice, say Claude. And the ability to bring all the power of the integration platform directly to the user right there and then makes a whole lot of sense. For more technical users in a CLI, of course, everyone, technical users are accustomed to command line interfaces for various apps of choice, whether they're doing their own scripting or whatever. But as we know, CLIs can be made more powerful, with the combination of AI. Like AI loves CLIs because it's all the power of the API, but with the addition of, all the context needed to make the CLI do a whole lot more than it would be able to figure out by just using the API itself. And when you think about a command line interface, it opens up doors even for our partners, for example, or more advanced customers who are able to look across environments or across accounts, all from a single place. And I think that just opens the surface area significantly, while still also providing, this 100% coverage of everything you can do in the UI as well, right? So we see users moving seamlessly between them, but increasingly spending more time in their platform of choice, and again, aligned with their persona.
Yeah, and I think one interesting part you mentioned there as a segue when it comes to CLI is CLI, you have the ability to really give the command line interface context on Celigo. And I know, Tyler, you were sort of the brains behind this operation. Could you dive a little bit deeper into how Celigo CLI can really communicate the ins and outs of the nuances of the Celigo platform?
Yeah. So, we initially started with the CLI and, we started this maybe 6 months or so back, and, it would kind of stumble along its way, right? It would try a command out and then not get what it wanted, and try another command, not get what it wanted, right? And so the CLI itself is great. It's a set of commands that it can run to do things on Celigo behind the scenes. But really the beneficial and the power comes in when you give it more context of how to execute these, or in what order to execute these commands, or just like architecturally, how do you build flows and how do you build on Celigo? And so of course, it has access to public API or public web searching and stuff, but if you could install, skills specifically for how to use that CLI to build flows, or how to use the CLI to build scripts and handlebar expressions and stuff within Celigo, then you really get the power of all of the commands that we're making available to an LLM to utilize, along with how to utilize them. So it's not trying to do a trial and error of what to use and just relying on the help text of command context alone. So what we did was we built a way to ship these skills within the CLI directly. So whenever somebody installs that CLI locally, we pre-package a set of about 20 skills that come along with it. That way you don't have to go off separately to find the skills to use the CLI better. Just right out the box, people can utilize it immediately with all the context available to start working in Celigo.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome. Sort of taking all of our domain knowledge and users being able to import them as skills. So they're not starting from scratch. They're starting from real contextual awareness, not only on their account, but on how the Celigo platform works, so they can build and manage automations. So this one, I think, is a good segue to Matt. I know there's a lot of offerings on the market that claim to be fully headless, but in reality, it's a subset of their capabilities, and you find yourself having to go right back to the UI. So can you give a little more insight into how Celigo thinks about our headless in terms of the capabilities we expose?
Yeah, I think your earlier slide captured it well. All of this, whether you're in the UI, through an LLM, or through and the CLI, or through the platform MCP, at the end of the day, it's all accessing the same set of APIs. We've always been an API-first platform. It just makes sense to deliver new functionality in APIs first, and then refine the UIs later. So we have made available through the CLI and platform MCP essentially the full functionality of the platform. And when we talk about all the things you can do, right, I think it is an opportunity to dig into some of that, right? So, for example, for a long time, actually dating back to 2019, we started our journey on AI-enabled error management here at Celigo, and being able to do troubleshooting through these mechanisms is proving really popular. We see that on Aura in the UI, but really the same things are applying. So having the full capabilities from build, from monitor, from all the user administration, connectivity, having that all in one place, again, in your user experience of choice. Developers want to be comfortable sitting in Cursor, for example, an LLM-powered IDE. A less technical user maybe joining together various bits of data in other systems might be more comfortable using Claude or OpenAI. All of that now becomes possible, but with full access to everything that's going on in the Celigo platform. And I think, yeah, that is a little different to what we see elsewhere in the market.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for everyone else's knowledge, when you think of AI, you might, in the context of iPaaS, you might just think of flow generation, right? That's where your head goes to. In reality, we're exposing much more than that. We're exposing the full platform. So we've had customers and partners use us for provisioning, use CLI to provision new accounts for users, and then also to build unique assets like lookup cache and troubleshoot across their whole account. So no matter what you want to do, you have that full flexibility to do it from wherever you choose. So I think that's a really important point to highlight. Next, I think teams, while this is amazing working from all of these different interfaces, probably have some governance questions. How do we make sure that only the right people are modifying or accessing the right assets when they're not sitting in the Celigo platform, but they're engaging with the Celigo platform from a terminal or an LLM? So Tyler, could you give a little more insight into how we're thinking about the governance angle here?
Yeah, for sure. So, historically, Celigo's had, we've always had APIs, we've had API tokens that people could utilize. But those have been restricted to, admins and owners. And we have a lot of people that are, manage and monitor users that want to manage their, just the integrations they have access to, or monitor just the flows that they have access to, so that they can, on a day-to-day basis, just work within their LLM of choice. So what we're working on is, and what we recently released is a personal access token. So that way, any user, regardless of their role, can create a token to use for CLI, and they only have access to what they would have access to anyways in the UI. And then on top of that, we'll be adding in OAuth as well, so that you don't even have to maintain tokens at all. It's just, I would OAuth through CLI or OAuth through platform MCP, and never have to manage these tokens that I'm storing locally in my environment variables. So, and of course, there's more stuff we want to do to get even more fine-grained permissions and privileges. But for now, it's exactly matching what you've got access to in the UI.
Yeah. So sort of a one-to-one where you can inherit the same permissions that you have in the UI from your terminal or your LLM. Great. Exactly. And I know you touched...
I think...
Go ahead.
Yeah, if I could just add as well, I think that just leads to a lot of other... we've been big for a long time on this idea of centralizing control, but also enabling sort of a federated model where individuals in a team can work independently within the guardrails that IT has set up, right? So this is just, I think, another proof point of that. So it's not like IT has to do everything. By ensuring that with these sort of permissionings and controls in place, IT can confidently move forward, knowing that anyone that is working through these other interfaces now, like the LLM-centric interfaces, are still only able to do the things that they're allowed to do, but now able to do it in their cockpit of choice at the speed that they want. And that, I think, just drives further adoption and greater ease of use, ultimately, reducing some of the bottlenecks that you sometimes find with IT teams.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned that move sort of in the future to go from personal access token to OAuth. Can we speak a little bit about what users can expect over the next 6 months or a year, and how we're looking in terms of our go-forward vision on Headless?
Yeah, I think, our platform MCP, already has OAuth support. So if you go through that, and try to configure it in Claude, for example, a pop-up comes up, you authenticate, you choose of the various environments you have access to, and then you're done. And immediately then back from within your chat, you can only do the things that you're allowed to do if you're working in the UI, right? So that correspondence, I think, is obviously a pretty important bedrock. It's a foundation of how you'd want to work with the platform. In terms of moving forward, I think it's interesting because, well, first, two things. Like, one, we will continue to have this full access to the platform, right? I think that's just the way we work. We are very API centric, as I said, and it just will make sense for us to continue. The other thing that I think we'll find, though, is you may find some features become available first through the CLI or platform MCP before they're available in the UI, right? So if we have new capabilities, obviously from an architecture point of view, we often build the APIs first, and we may begin to expose them so that customers can take advantage of new things even sooner through these other interfaces. I think that could make sense from a developer point of view. And just as an example, I saw this morning one of our PMs pointing out a number of new APIs that have been exposed around B2B. So, for example, again, through these through these APIs now, and therefore through the LLM channels, the ability to download EDI files directly or MDN files from a B2B point of view, right? So any capability of the platform, I think we'll see that continue to evolve. And so in a sense, I think there isn't a specific roadmap for CLI and MCP. Its roadmap is the platform roadmap, right? So as we add new capabilities, I think you'll find them appearing in these new interfaces, sometimes ahead of time, but at least on par with the rest of the platform.
Yeah, Tyler, did you have anything that you wanted to add there?
Yeah, no, I mean, just to add is we have this fairly automated at this point where, as we're releasing stuff and deploying stuff, like, we update our API docs automatically based off of all the new, models that we might have to create for a particular feature and then with those APIs, it's got a, bit of an automated pipeline to create new CLI commands and update platform MCP tools. And of course, there's some human intervention there, to make sure, does this make sense or not make sense, or is this like more of an internal API? So, but for the most part, we've sort of just automated this process of onboarding new commands and capabilities so that whatever you have access to in the platform itself is accessed by any of these other means, and there's no limited gap in time period between them.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And one other piece that I just thought of with OAuth coming out is that hopefully eventually within the next few months, we'd be listed in the directories of, say, a Claude. So it'd be even easier to access. You could actually, for Platform MCP, there'd be a pre-built connector there that you can just install, and it'll be very seamless for your team. But Matt, did you have anything else to add there?
Yeah, so we're just going through the paperwork there with the various vendors to get those listings up. We should give a shout out to developer.celigo.com, one-stop shop for everything you need. Again, credit to Tyler and the team for pulling that together. I think it's a very easy way to get up and running. All the instructions are there, including specific instructions if you're working in Claude versus Gemini versus ChatGPT. So all of that's available. I think I know looking at the attendees today, I know we have some partners out there. I think this opens up a lot of interesting opportunities for partners who maybe, say through their LLM and maybe in their IDE want to work across multiple accounts at once. I think it enables this idea of building a single pane of glass to see across multiple accounts. All that is possible. Obviously, you can't do that within the UI. You're sort of looking at, within one account at a time. So there are some benefits depending on exactly what you're trying to do. I think we're also looking at customers doing a lot more programmatic work, especially, we work a lot in e-commerce scenarios where, for example, some of our customers might have hundreds of stores that, share 90%, commonality in the configuration, but that 10% that's different. We see customers and our partners looking to further automate and systematize that. And again, being able to manage that through, having another interface to choose from here, knowing that the UI is keeping up as well. If you ever log into the UI, you're going to see exactly what you'd expect to see. But again, just providing this option of maybe doing different jobs in different places, I think that's really going to be the key.
Yep. Really good points there. I do want to be cognizant of time and want to make sure that we get to Q&A. So I know you've dropped a few questions. If you have any other questions, please drop them in the chat and we will get to them. Before we go into the Q&A, this was a little bit higher level, sort of understanding our general strategy behind Headless. We will actually be talking with one of our partners, Bring IT, in Celigo Sessions webinar on August 19th, 11 a.m. Pacific. And there we'll actually get into specific use cases and demos of how Bring IT is actively using CLI in their day-to-day workflow, and they're seeing a lot of ROI. So they have some interesting statistics there. So if you found this interesting and want to go a layer deeper, I highly recommend saving your seat for that webinar. Again, it's August 19th, 11 a.m. Pacific. Okay, so now we're on to Q&A. I did see a question in there from Dasari. With AI agents transforming enterprise integration, what skills should developers focus on today to stay ahead over the next 3 to 5 years? I think that's a tough question, but I will lob that up to Matt or Tyler if you have any thoughts there.
I'll maybe take a first swing here. I would say what remains differentiated, let's say, if you're a developer in the integration space, is kind of knowing what to build in the first place, right? So the build, as we see in a lot of software engineering, the build is perhaps getting easier, and we are now making 3 different surfaces on top of a very powerful platform to make that even easier. I think the discernment on what to build and the right approaches, I think that's actually going to be where the differentiation lies. I think that applies to everything, given that the build is becoming just that much easier. I will say too, that there is a total cost of ownership to think about. We've always emphasized that here at Celigo, thinking about what happens after day one, right? And that's why it's important that we're supporting in these releases, not just the build side of it, but also the monitoring, the long-term management of integration. The last time I checked, we have some flows running at Celigo that have been live for 9 years. The same customer running the same flow over 9 years, dealing with goodness knows how many iterations of the various apps that they're working with and all that change of our platform. And this flow is just continuing to run. Think about the cost of ownership. So I think integration developers have to be thinking ahead to that. It's not just about the build. It's about like, what do I build? And then once it's built, how do I own it? How do I, maintain it? How do I improve it over time? Tyler, I don't know if you'd add anything there.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point because, after you build, it's a lot of maintaining. And then, at my last company, when I was managing our Celigo flows, that was probably my least favorite part. Was like the build was super exciting and super fun, but then when I had to manage it day to day, that's the less exciting, the less fun piece. So we have a lot of partners that have started creating dashboarding tools and like automation of error corrections and stuff, and on their day to day. That way, it's just they don't have to go in as much and maintain. It's just a lot of it's done for them. And of course, it brings it back into the, if they need to approve something, right, then it brings it back to them. So
cool. And we have one more question, I think, from the chat on the difference between CLI and platform MCP and the different personas that they cater to. So, Matt, I can let you take this one.
Yeah. Sure. I think, a command line interface, I think for AI, as I said, they sort of love a CLI. And we've seen it sort of, as Tyler said earlier, we just see it brute forcing through things. So if you are in a developer environment and you know what you're doing with configuring a CLI, perhaps you're comfortable in a terminal window. Again, I'm really describing a persona here. I'm talking about someone who thinks in terms of working inside an IDE. In that sense, I think it makes perfect sense to work directly with a CLI. But if you are not using a code tool, but instead just using a regular chat interface, the ability to seamlessly plug in the platform MCP from Celigo to fully control your integration portfolio, along with any of your other business apps that you might be working on. I think that just makes sense for perhaps someone that's less technical. We are seeing users do both. Again, they're able to do equivalent jobs in different places. So again, I think it will come down a lot to user preference. Imagine though that this is essentially equivalent functionality, just exposed in slightly different ways.
Yeah.
So you can
go ahead, Tyler.
And to distinguish the two a little bit, like if I'm in a web browser, for example, my only option there is probably going to be the platform MCP. And so I'm in Claude AI or something, or Gemini or ChatGPT in browser. I could do still anything on Celigo with that platform MCP. But if I'm locally on my desktop or then I can run that CLI because I have access to terminal and that machine that it's running on.
Yep. So yeah, it's really based on your persona, based out of the tools that you operate from. The Celigo platform is going to meet you there. So I know I've engaged via LLM, via Claude is how I typically log in. But then there's also times where I want to work directly from the terminal, and I have the same functionality wherever I work. So it's really awesome. And yeah, thanks again, Matt and Tyler, for joining. And it's always good to hear the insights directly from the product team that's actually building this.
Thanks, Chris.
Yep. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah. All right. And everyone, feel free to connect with us all on LinkedIn, share any feedback. But thanks again for joining us. We really appreciate it. And again, sign up for the Celigo Sessions if you want a little more in-depth look.